we're going to, you guys are going to do some homework and look up the things that it says I can, it's a little circle. I can be what it says I can be. I can do what it says I can do. I am what it says I am. So I will have some
Nice.
of those things ready to go.
Great.
You don't want me to have one, and then I don't have to do any homework. Oops.
Great. Well, thank you, John. That'll be great. So next week, then, I won't have the 8 o'clock class. We'll just have the 11 o'clock class. We may have a few people that come from the 8 o'clock to this one then on next week. So I'll be in Parker. It's my sisters and I were all born in September, and we have a big family gathering in Parker. So that's going to happen next weekend.
It's my birthday next week.
Oh, really? When's your birthday?
The 18th.
The 18th. Oh, all right. Right on Sunday. Oh, okay. Well, happy birthday upcoming. I'll be 62 the 22nd of September. So, 74. Well, actually, my birthday's the 21st. Yeah, 24 years old, huh? Be nice, huh? I remember 24.
I don't know about that.
No, it wasn't that nice?
24 was awesome.
24 was awesome, but 74 not so awesome.
Being 74 is a gift.
Well, that's true. That's true. Okay, so this week we are in Numbers, and we last week when we started in Numbers, we learned we began counting off the people getting organized, and we have this document that we saved, which is called What I Have Learned About God in Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus. And I just wanted to post for you our current list so that you can see that we still have it. And what I'd like to do is, if we, as we go along, to connect with the things that we've learned about God in our studies. And so I want to keep that up so that we can add to it as we go along. Carolyn, I was going to ask Carolyn to give me her notes. She made a really good note this week. I'm going to have to email her and ask her to send it to me. She made a really good comment this morning at the end of class that I thought was very reflective and a good one, so I'll get that for you. I was going to ask her before I came in here, but I forgot to catch her. So as we go through, in the 8 o'clock time, I have several people who are brand new to our study. So I've really been emphasizing that we're not reading this to learn about the laws and the Jewish people. We're reading this to learn about God. And so that you all have been with us for a while, so remember that's our focus. So they got the people, they took a year, the great big old group of people, it took about a year for them to get to the base of Mount Sinai. Then they spent a month there getting what we saw, the contents of Leviticus, where God came to the tent of meeting and was present with Moses and was giving him the contents of the law. The law really starts in Exodus 20 with the 10 Commandments, and then we get all the specific things as you go through Leviticus. Now Numbers, he's getting them organized. So if you think about what they are now, you've got all these people who've been in slavery at least 300 years. They were in Egypt 400 years. So sometime after they got there, they began to be slaves. So how old is the United States of America?
200.
Cool. So can you imagine in another 200 years from now, so double this time, imagine someone saying, okay, now we're going to go back to our homeland. Everybody get ready, let's go. How different are people? I mean, when the first colonies the first colonists came over, you had quite a bit of similarity in the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we were going to, in 200 years, not even as diverse as we are now, but in another 200 years, go back, how different would we be than when we first came in? They weren't so noble when they first came in. But now it's been 400 years. They really don't have an identity except out of Egypt. I mean, really slavery and in Egypt and these little remnants of what used to be. And now when they're traveling, how are they traveling? Just willy-nilly? You know, they're just walking along together? How many of them are there? 2 million? Do we know
They're
there's...
going home to a foreign land.
Right. And they've been in slavery all this time. Now they're making their own decisions. Before, who made their decisions for them? Whoever their slave master was. You did what the household master told you to do. They really have an identity problem and they have an organization problem. They're just walking around in a mob. And so God is setting up these things that he's giving them so that to keep them safe, to give them the way to do things. And I think that is so great for us because we are trying to learn about God. And by seeing how he helps them have some structure, we get it reveals to us what God likes and what he wants. Does God like orderliness? I would say so. He likes orderliness. He likes there to be ways that things are decided, patterns, procedures, right? And he's giving them the principles by which to live, but he definitely likes the orderliness, likes things to go in a certain way and have consistency. We see that throughout what he's doing. So they counted the people, and remember that they have a mixed multitude. In Numbers 2, chapter 2, verse 32. These are the Israelites counted according to their families, all the men in the camps by their divisions, number 603,550. The Levites, however, were not counted along with the other Israelites as the Lord commanded Moses. So that's the end of the counting. They've got everybody counted. So you say, well, why do you say 2 million? Okay, if you have 603,000 that are between the ages of 20 and 50, so they're probably married. So you double that number, you're at 1.2 million. You give them one child, or maybe 10 or 12 if he was like Israel. Add kids, add the people younger than 20 and over 50, and then add the mixed multitude. There were people with them that weren't counted as Jewish. They weren't a part of the Jewish families. They were Egyptian or other nationalities that came with them. And the Bible calls that the mixed multitude. Many people who were married to a Jewish person. So that mixed multitude then, those people then he organized. In the last part that we read, we saw the organization. And this is the entrance to the temple here on the east side. And you can see the camp of Judah is at the head. And that's the most people, 186,400. And at the rear is the next largest group of people, which is the camp of Ephraim, includes Benjamin, Manasseh, and Ephraim. So that's 180,100 people. So you can see that the length of the temple, the tabernacle is lengthwise, and at the end of that are these two family groups, the largest family groups. And then on the sides, going from the sides, north and south on the tabernacle, you have Dan, Asher, Naphtali. That group is called the camp of Dan. That's 157,600. And then the camp of Gad, Simeon, Reuben, which is the camp of Reuben, is 151,450. So remember, we talked about that shape. You have the longest in the center, then you have a shorter in the edge, you have the shape of a cross. And that is what they looked like when they marched, when they moved, when people saw them move, and that's the way they camped, in the shape of a cross. And what's at the center of the cross? The cloud of fire and smoke. That's right over the tabernacle. And we talked about the image of that and how important that image is to us, because we see Christ present with us because of his sacrifice on the cross. They saw God with them as they traveled and moved. They could see the presence of God with them. And they strike fear into the people all around them now. You know, before they were a target because they were a mob and anybody could have come and attacked them and stole their animals or whatever. And that's why they didn't stay on the main roads. They got out into the wilderness areas and traveled there, because on a main road they would have been targets for bandits, right? But now they're getting organized. Now everybody's staying away from them because they look like a formidable force now. It doesn't look like just people, around. Now, we're going to hear more about the Levites in this next section and about their responsibilities and what happens there. Notice that Moses and the priests, so Moses himself and Aaron and the ones who are serving as priests, they're over here on this east side, which would represent the entrance to the tabernacle. And then the other Levite clans are around the edges. And that's Merari, Gershon, and Kohath are the other clans. And we're going to see their roles and responsibilities in regard to the temple. Moses and the priest, Aaron and the priest, they actually did the temple service, but the tabernacle service. But the other groups had a part in support, especially when they traveled. They protected the tabernacle, but they also helped with moving the tabernacle. Okay? So that was the arrangement of the camp. And then in Numbers 2:34, it says, "So the Israelites did everything the Lord commanded Moses. That is the way they encamped under their standards, and that is the way they set out, each of them with their clan and family." So now everybody's connected by family. So would that make a difference as far as your safety? If you were all mixed up in all different places, would it make a difference for you to be with your own family and clan rather than being mixed up? It would have a sense of security, right? A sense of orderliness. You assume there's going to be a patriarch that's kind of guiding things that are happening within that clan, little squabbles and stuff. Moses is going to get some instruction on how to prevent some of those squabbles. But you got to imagine there's a lot of little stuff going on all the time, right? Among groups like that. So they're by family and clan, which means they have kind of a natural hierarchy of who's going to guide things. Quit that Joe and Schmo. That's enough of that, because the patriarch is there to make sure those things stay where they should. Or the matriarch, they're keeping things going. So starting in chapter 3 now is where we are. This is the account of the family of Aaron and Moses at the time the Lord spoke to Moses at Mount Sinai. The names of the sons of Aaron were Nadab the firstborn and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar. Those were the names of Aaron's sons, the anointed priests who were ordained to serve as priests. Nadab and Abihu, however, died before the Lord when they made an offering with unauthorized fire before him in the desert of Sinai. You remember that story? Mm-hmm. They got gone. So they had no sons. So Eleazar and Ithamar as priests served the lifetime of their father Aaron. So when you have Moses and Aaron and his sons, they're talking about Eleazar and Ithamar as the sons. Nadab and Abihu were toasted because they offered that unholy fire. So what's the lesson of Nadab and Abihu? I'll give you a hint. It's my first black sentence there. God has a way he wants things done. Why does he dislike? Pardon? They disobeyed. And they did their own thing too. Like they were doing a magic trick.
In the right spot, didn't they?
It was like a magic trick to them. They were going out to do this thing. Ooh, that was really cool. We just did that. Of course, it did help that they had had a little wine. Remember, it said they had been drinking. And then they go out and they're going to make this. Oh, let's do that again. So when we see these commands that we see of organization and all that, we're seeing the importance that God places on it. You're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the committee. You're serving the community. It's not a show. It's not an act that we're putting on here. Yeah, make a big deal about the snack. What?
It's almost like they're making fun of God.
Right.
They weren't taking it seriously.
Not taking it seriously. It's a trick. Let's go do that trick again. That was a cool trick. Yeah. And why does he dislike it when we do it outside of his direction? It's probably not like Alan and Annabelle, who just couldn't find their snack because it wasn't in the place they expected it, right? But why does God dislike it when we do out of his direction? Because he doesn't want us to do tricks. He wants us to know who's doing it. We aren't doing it. God is doing it. It's by his power that it's being done, not by our power. So have we seen that example in other stories of the Old Testament where someone did something on their own and God did not? Moses himself, right? Yeah. Any others? Jonah?
King Saul.
Saul? Yeah, it's a common theme, right? That God says how he wants it done, and that's what he wants done. No doing it some other way. Do you think that we have struggled with that in the New Testament church, in the New Covenant? Yeah, we kind of do, don't we? So his power comes from him, and he wants everyone to know that it's not some sort of magic trick or a power of the man. That is what happened to Nadab and Abihu, and later we're going to see others who are going to make similar mistakes. So let's go on to verse 5. The Lord said to Moses, "Bring the tribe of Levi and present them to Aaron the priest to assist him. They are to perform," I need to change this to be 3:5. They are to perform duties for him and for the whole community at the tent of meeting by doing the work of the tabernacle. They are to take care of all the furnishings of the tent of meeting, fulfilling the obligations of the Israelites by doing the work of the tabernacle. Give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They are the Israelites who are to be given wholly to him. Appoint Aaron and his sons to serve as priests. Anyone else who approaches the sanctuary will be put to death. Okay, do you hear that? That's not saying the whole tribe of Levi. That's saying specifically Aaron and the priest. Moses, Aaron, and the priest are the only ones allowed to approach that inner part of the sanctuary. So the emphasis is that God has decided who's going to do what. And it's a life or death seriousness. He didn't leave it up to them to pick who was going to be the one to go in or do what they were going to do. Let's go further. Verse 11. The Lord also said to Moses, I have taken the Levites from among the Israelites in place of the first male offspring of every Israelite woman. Okay, wait a minute. What's that saying? Now, out of the 12 children that Israel had, that became the 12 tribes, we have one that is Joseph. And Joseph is not listed as the tribe. It's listed under his sons, his 2 sons. So they got 2 slots, right? And so in order for there to be 2 slots, you had to take out Levi. So that's what he's saying here. Levi is not going to inherit land. The tribe of Levi is going to be in charge of the priesthood and the sanctuary and the tabernacle. That's going to be their job. So the 12 tribes that we see don't include Levi. So that's why he's saying here, the Levites are mine, God says. And Levi was the firstborn of Israel. Get it? So he's saying that's the firstborn. Where's the other firstborn thing that these people experienced? In the plagues? What did they experience in Egypt with the firstborn?
Well, they saw the Egyptians who were subject to the plague lose their firstborn in the final plague.
Firstborn of what? Humans?
Humans and livestock.
And livestock. And then what were you saying about?
The Israelites were scared because they believed God and put the blood over there.
If they had not put the blood on the doorpost, then what would have happened?
Their firstborn.
Either they had the blood over the doorpost or the firstborn was taken of everybody. The Jews, if they put the blood over, they were covered by the blood, right? So here he's saying, I have taken the Levites from the Israelites in place of the first male offspring of every Israelite woman. The Levites are mine, for all the firstborn are mine. When I struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, I set apart for myself every firstborn in Israel, whether human or animal. They are to be mine. I am the Lord. So he's saying then that they are his. They are mine. So he's going to work it out here where they are accountable for the firstborn belonging to him. He told that to them when the 10 plagues happened. He told them that this was going to be a sign for the future. Okay, now the other part here that said, we're going to go back to this idea of the firstborn. So we're going to hold on to that for a minute, because I want to talk about this part where it says, they are to be mine. I am Yahweh. Are there other gods? Say no.
No.
There's only God with a capital G. We use the term gods with a small g to represent things that people hold up and worship.
Idols.
But think of God's point of view.
Yeah.
What? Gods with a little g? What are you talking about? There is no other God. I am God. I am the all-powerful, the one and almighty God. That's how God is thinking. And we use that term gods as if there are other powers. They're just not as powerful as Jehovah, Yahweh, God. But from God's point of view, there is no other thing. So here, because at this time they had idols and different things, right? And so this is God establishing, no, I am God. I am the Almighty. The firstborn belongs to me. And he says, they are to be mine. I am Yahweh. How many times have we seen in the Old Testament and the New Testament God setting apart things as belonging to him? He says, you belong to me. You are to be set apart as I am set apart. How is our Lord God set apart? Is he the same as the culture that we live in?
No.
Is he the same as these little g gods? He's nothing like that. Look at 1 Peter 1, 13 to 16. First Peter 1, 13 to 16. I just wanted to pull out one example in the New Testament and read it for you, because we read this over and over in the Old Testament. I've even listed the places that we've read it in Leviticus 11, 44, 45, in Leviticus 20, verse 7, and verse 26, in Leviticus 22, verse 32, and Leviticus 19, verse 2. And now I want to show you one of the many New Testament references. 1 Peter 1, 13 to 16. Therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. As obedient children, do not conform to evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is set apart, so be set apart in all you do. For it is written, be set apart, because I am set apart. That is over and over again said in Scripture. So one of the first ways to know that there's a problem in your Christian life is if you're no different than the world around you. We are called to be different as God is different, different in the same way that he is different. So when we do what is pleasing to God, it sets us apart from the world, and it protects us from sin that entangles us and aligns us with the one and only Yahweh. There's no other God. In reality, there's only God with a capital G. All other people or things people choose to worship are just their imaginings and deceptions. There is no actual other God. When we obey Yahweh, we receive the blessings associated with the covenant we are in with him. The work of our covenant is twofold: love God and love people to a saving knowledge of God. That's the job of our new covenant. Now, do we need all these rules? Well, if we did, God would provide them for us. But we can use this law as our teacher. The law and the prophets were our teacher to show us what God wants and who he is. So we can learn from the experiences of these people how important things are to God. One of the things I'm noticing that's different than our culture is how freely we accept things that are sinful or evil, like it's no big deal. Instead of recognizing how sin entangles us, we're always allowing little sins in our life, things we know that really aren't quite right, but we just say, oh, it's not that big a deal. Well, that's exactly what snagged these people too. And it will snag us, right? We need to consider living set apart from this world, not the same as this world, but the way that what God says for us. And then we need to keep refining that and do better and better. You know, Marvin's not a young man, but I imagine he could find, I know it's shocking,
I'm shocked.
I think he could find something that God wants him to work on.
Probably a few things.
Probably. I never ask. I always tell God, just let me only know about one thing at a time. I'm overwhelmed with all the things I need to do better, right? I say, just give me one, I'll work on that one, whatever it is. But right, we all have, no matter how old we are, we have ways that we're refining and growing and becoming increasingly like God, set apart because he is set apart,
And if you
different
can't
from
find
this
them,
world.
You could ask your spouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be careful who you ask in case you don't
Yes.
really want to know. It's true, though,
Yeah.
isn't it? We all should be working on something, refining. You can also ask God to reveal it to you, but that's almost as hard a lesson as asking your spouse, because God will bring it to your mind.
Yeah.
I find that we're getting caught up in if we love as we should love, then therefore we should have an attitude of inclusion.
I think
We're
that's
worried about being judged by our neighbors than being judged by God.
And that's just, I see an attitude. We have to sin, whatever, doesn't matter. If you love, you have to have inclusion of other people.
that is true. So how did God deal with that? How did what was God's attitude toward the Israelites in regard to mixing with other people? Were they allowed to marry Egyptians? Yes.
They were
Did
allowed.
Egyptians come with them? Yes. Yes, they did. Right? There was mixed.
Yes.
They were mixed, right?
Right.
But what did God say?
Okay, forgot.
Regarding the land they were going to, they were not supposed to intermarry with those people.
Right?
In fact, they were supposed to expel them from the land.
But what about the people that came with?
Uh,
From Egypt.
God
they were
was.
part of their society.
It's not about being different to
No.
God, right? What was the problem with the people in the land? Their sin.
Mhm.
Their sin. Their commitment to worshiping all kinds of things and promiscuousness, all kinds of things. Those people of the mixed multitude who came with the Jews were expected to live like the Jews.
Right.
Mhm.
They were expected to be a part of that. So that is a tricky thing.
More tricky.
And sin entangles us. So what happens is one little thing leads to another little thing, and pretty soon we can't even sort out in our head what's the sin and what's okay. How much, wait, how do I do this? It becomes very confusing. And that's when we go back to the principles that Christ gave us. We're supposed to love God and we're supposed to love people. But loving people doesn't mean that you let them go to hell because you don't want to cause a conflict. The most loving thing you might have to do with someone is contradict what they think or what they're saying, because you love them enough to speak truthfully to them. Of course, the way you do it.
Then you have that fine line that you need to walk so that, yes, I am set apart, but I'm not set apart the way you think that I am, being a non-believer.
Correct.
I'm not holier than thou,
Right.
set apart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was pointed out that we should be inclusive.
Mhm.
However, we should also be aware that the term inclusive has been perverted by our
Exactly.
current society to mean something totally different
Exactly.
than what we should use it as.
Right.
And you're bad if you're not totally inclusive. You can't possibly, God has said love. And it just gets to be a real twist.
And God's love is not without discipline.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, let's go on. Really good applications. In verse 14, the Lord said to Moses in the desert of Sinai, "Count the Levites by their families and clans. Count every male a month old or more." So Moses counted them as he was commanded by the word of the Lord. And so when we see our chart here that I showed earlier, the names of the sons of Levi were here: Gershon, Kohath, and let's see, where is it? Here, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Those were the other sons of Levi. And so those were the other tribes that are around. And so what he's going to do now is he's going to say what the responsibilities of these other ones are. They're not the same as these guys like Moses and the priests. They're the ones who are actually serving in the tabernacle. These guys are not. Even though they are from the tribe of Levi, they're not from Aaron's line. They're related. But they're going to have different tasks, and they're not allowed to go into the tabernacle or into the same place as the priest and all that. So they're not allowed to do that. So down here, I can read all the names to you, but the truth is that we don't know how most of them are pronounced, and so I can read them to you with confidence so that it sounds like I'm pronouncing them right. But just so you know, no one really knows for sure how it's pronounced. So these are the names of the Gershonite clans: Libni and Shimei. The Kohathite clans: Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uziel. And the Merarite clans were Mali and Mushi. And these were the Levite clans according to their families. To Gershon belonged the clans of the Libnites and Shamites. These were the Gershonite clans. The number of the males a month old or more who were counted was 7,500. The Gershonite clans were to camp on the west behind the tabernacle. The leaders of the families of the Gershonite and whatever clans. And so in verse 25, at the tent of meeting, the Gershonites were responsible for, so this is the Gershonites as a whole clan. This is going to be their job. The care of the tabernacle and tent, its coverings, the curtain at the entrance to the tent of meeting, the curtains of the courtyard, the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle and altar, and the ropes and everything related to their use. So you got to imagine they have this like tent structure up with kind of poles sticking up and poles going across, and they've got cloth and skins hanging that are creating a curtain. So they're going to be responsible for all that stuff. Now he's going to go through on each of these and describe what their clan job is. So this is the Gershons. They're going to be known for this part of the curtains, the courtyard, and all of this organization. 27, the Kohaths, which means the Amorites, Israelites, Hebronites, and Uzzites. They're going to be responsible, if you look at verse 31, the care of the ark, the table, the lampstand, the altars, the articles of the sanctuary used in ministering, the curtain, and everything related to their use. Now, wait a minute. What happens if somebody goes into that area or touches any of those things that is not a priest? They're dead.
Right.
They're dead. So what this is saying is, Kohath, you know, if I was in this clan, I'd be going, ooh, how are we going to do that? Because
Right.
only Aaron and the priests are allowed to do that. Well, they're going to give directions on how that happens. So this is like telling them, the Kohaths, that they're in charge of these people, they're in charge of these pieces. They're-
And don't these have to do with the process when they pack it up and move
Pack
it
it
to
up,
a new place and then
Move
set it up
it,
again?
set it up.
Once it's all set up, they don't.
But
they're not
how do
allowed
you
in there.
pack it up or put it up without touching it or looking at it?
Right.
So that he's going to answer that. Go down to verse 33, you can see the Merarites.
Yeah.
And go down to verse 36. They were to take care of the frames of the tabernacle, crossbars, posts, bases, all of its equipment, and everything related to the use, as well as the posts of the surrounding courtyard with their bases, tent pegs, and ropes. So verse 38, Moses and Aaron and his sons were to camp to the east of the tabernacle. We talked about that. And they were responsible for the care of the sanctuary on behalf of the Israelites. Anyone else who approached the sanctuary was to be put to death. So that's what the scripture is saying here. Now these guys are in charge of all these pieces, but if these guys aren't the ones who get it ready to go, they're going to be dead. So it becomes the responsibility of Moses, Aaron, and his sons to properly pack these things before they're even handed to Kohathites or any of the others in order to keep them alive. So this whole process was very specific and careful. So in verse 39, you can see they counted the Levites and Moses and Aaron in the clans. So you've got about 22,000. The Lord said to Moses on number 40, count all the firstborn Israelites, males who are a month old or more, and make a list of their names. Take the Levites for me in place of all the firstborn of Israelites, and the livestock of the Levites in place of all the firstborn of the livestock of the Israels. I am the Lord. So Moses counted all the firstborn of the Israelites as the Lord commanded him. The total number of firstborn males, a month old or more, listed by name, was 22,273. So why was God so specific about the rules? We talked about that. I'm going to go on. Numbers 3, verse 44. The Lord said to Moses, take the Levites in place of the firstborn of Israel, and the livestock of the Levites in place of their livestock. The Levites are to be mine. I am the Lord. To redeem the 273 firstborn Israelites who exceed the number of the Levites, collect 5 shekels for each one, according to the sanctuary shekel, which weighs 20 gerahs. Give the money for the redemption of the additional Israelites to Aaron and his sons. Okay, so the firstborn that were of the tribe of Levi, God already has, because they're in the service of his temple and the tabernacle. So he's already got them. But the firstborn of all the others, that's going to be 273 that exceed the number of Levites that there are. So those 273 then need to be redeemed. Do you remember when we talked about redemption? If a person had a donkey, which was not acceptable to give, but they had a good donkey, they could go to the priest and say, I've got this really great donkey, but of course you can't sacrifice a donkey. The priest would put a value on that donkey. The person would add 20% to it and then give that much in shekels. And that would take the place of the gift, take the place of the donkey itself. So that's what's happening here. God is saying, I'm going to redeem those firstborn, and those that are in your families, all you other tribes, those firstborn that you have, I want you to redeem them with the shekels. So Moses collected the redemption money from those who exceeded the number redeemed by the Levites. From the firstborn of the Israelites, he collected silver weighing 1,365 shekels according to the sanctuary shekel. Moses gave the redemption money to Aaron and his sons as he was commanded by the word of the Lord. So what was the work of those shekels? To support the work of the temple. Whatever needed to be done for the temple. That was the money they could use because they don't have land, they don't have crops, they don't have herds, nothing like that. So that was the money that would go to the work of the tabernacle. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, chapter 4, take a census of the Kohathites. Now, do you remember we read about the Kohathites? They're the ones that are going to be taking the holy stuff, right? So he says, take a census of the Kohathite branch of the Levites by their clans and families. Count all of them from 30 to 50 years of age who come to serve in the work of the tent of meeting. Now, how old were the ones that he chose that were going to go to battle? Do you remember? 20 to 50. How old is it to serve in the temple?
30 to 50.
Why would you choose 20 to 50 to go do battle, but 30 to 50 to do this job in the temple? I know why.
You need more maturity.
Yes, yes. You don't need some impulsive 22-year-old, right? Handling that stuff. You'd be dead meat, right?
Right. I mean,
But in battle, you want the younger, stronger, follow orders kind of thing, right? So yeah, when it said this, I'm right away going, oh, I get that. I get the reason for the 30 to 50 years old. So let's see where we're at. Okay, this is going to answer a question. Verse 4, this is the work of the Kohathites at the tent of meeting, the care of the most holy things, when the camp is to move. Aaron and his sons are to go in and take down the shielding curtain, put it over the ark of the covenant law. Then they are to cover the curtain with the durable leather, spread a cloth of solid blue over that, and put the poles in place. They basically shielded now. Now they can take that and they can hand it to a Kohathite to be the one to carry it, because it's now shielded, wrapped up in the proper way that it's supposed to be wrapped up for moving. And it's color coded, because if you go through here, they put a different color cloth on the different pieces. So you know, oh, that's that blue cloth one. That's the ark. Okay, Joe, you're in charge of that, bub. Yeah. Whatever piece they were supposed to carry, they would know it by the color coding. So isn't that interesting? Look at verse 7. Over the table of the presence, they're to spread a blue cloth and put on it the plates, the dishes and the bowls, and the jars of drink offerings. The bread that is continually there is to remain on it. They are to spread a scarlet cloth over them, cover that with the durable leather, and put the poles in place. They are to take a blue cloth and cover the lampstand that is for light, together with its lamps, its wick trimmer and trays, and all its jars for the olive oils, and it goes on. Each one they wrap in leather, and they wrap with some color of cloth. Verse 15, after Aaron and his sons, they're the ones doing this wrapping. After they have finished covering the holy furnishings and all the holy articles, and when the camp is ready to move, only then are the Kohathites to come and do the carrying. But they must not touch the holy things or they will die. The Kohathites are to carry those things that are in the tent of meeting. So how careful do you think they were with carrying that kind of stuff?
Don't start going down that hill.
And Aaron and his sons do the covering, and the Kohathites carry it. And they each carry their own part that they've been assigned to. So that became their job. They were to take it after it's been properly prepared, move it to the next place, and then at the next place they would put it out in for the priest to take care of unwrapping. Eleazar, go ahead.
Yeah, later in their history, after they were in the land, maybe in the book of Judges, I don't know, there were some stories of them hauling the ark out when they were going to battle.
Yeah.
I kind of didn't get the impression that they did all this stuff
Yeah.
toward getting it ready to move.
Like unto many of the things that we see in the original commandments, as we go through and read that history, it's going to be interesting to read it from the eyes of understanding the commandments in the first place, because many of those stories, when I read them, I had never gone through boring old Leviticus and boring old Numbers or understood it. So I'm really eager now to go back, Marvin, to some of those, because I think it might reveal more clearly to me what was wrong in that situation. I think in some of those stories we think, oh, this was what they did wrong. But when we look at the law, we may say it was not only that,
Yeah,
but
I thought it would empower the
Yeah.
army to bring the
like
ark
a
out.
magic, like a magic trick. Which, oh, doesn't God love that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
His whole point is to recognize that He is the power, not some magic trick that He's given them. Yeah. I think it's going to shed light on the other stories too. So I wanted to make this note on verse 20. But the Kohathites must not go in to look at the holy things even for a moment, or they will die. Okay, so Moses and Aaron's job is essential that they perfectly wrap that stuff and that they don't give it to the Kohathites, or they're risking their lives. The Gershonites, the other family that's there, they're again from 30 to 50 years old, same as the other. And now their clan is in charge of carrying other work. They're to carry the curtains of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and there's that doesn't have as much scariness to it. But Aaron the priest, Ithamar, the son of Aaron the priest, is the one who will be in charge of that. So if there's anything that would put the Gershonites at risk, then Ithamar is on the look for that. But they should be able to move that under his direction without being afraid it's going to kill him. The Merarites, same thing. They're in charge of the, as part of all their service at the tent, they're to carry the frames of the tabernacle, its crossbars and posts, and including the stuff surrounding the bases like the tent pegs, ropes, and the equipment. And each person had a specific thing that they were supposed to carry. It says right there before, in verse 32, the end, assign to each man the specific thing he is to carry. And that is the service of them. So if you can imagine this, when it's time to move, you have the priests go in, and they're in charge of governing everything to make sure no one gets exposed where they're not supposed to, take something that's not wrapped yet. And they're saying, okay, this is ready. But they have one job, like Laura, she's supposed to go get this one thing. And I'm going, and as soon as the priest says, okay, Laura, go, I go get my post I'm supposed to carry, right? And that's my post. I carry that post wherever we're going. That's my job to carry. So that's the kind of way that it worked. Very organized, very synchronized by the priests themselves. And you had your job was very specific. I think that's pretty good organization. And when it was time to set up, you would do it all backwards, right? And it was under the guidance of the...
Life or death.
Mhm. So you have this tight-knit community. Now they're organized, ready to walk. Where they live is set up, how they're going to move. Everybody's got their job. They know what they're supposed to do. So now God's going to establish a few rules for living in this kind of style, because you can imagine that there might be certain kinds of conflicts that are going to occur living this way. The first one he takes care of is the purity of the camp. That's in chapter 5, the very first part of chapter 5. So what would happen if you allowed someone who had ringworm to stay in your camp? Do you have medicines? You're in the middle of the desert. Do you have anything? Maybe you think it's ringworm, but you're not right sure. It could be that other form of leprosy, or it could be just psoriasis. Right? You don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, but you have nothing for it. So what are you going to do? Verse 1, the Lord said to Moses, command the Israelites to send away from the camp anyone who has a defiling skin disease or a discharge of any kind, or who is ceremonially unclean because of a dead body. Okay, now that makes sense, doesn't it? Even when we saw in the law part, and we were reading through Leviticus, remember the skin infections, they had to stay in their tent, or in some cases they had to go out of the group, and they had different, and then you could come in by meeting certain criteria. Once it disappeared, you could be approved by the priest, right? And then you could come back in. If you didn't get clear, then you never could come back in. And what problem would that be? Well, if you were in Jerusalem already, or in the land that you're going to be at, and you go outside of where other people are, that's where we saw things like leprosy camps and people outside the town saying, stay away, right? That would be that kind of thing. But you could probably get food, maybe your family would bring food out to you. You might even have a colony that gets together and kind of takes care of one another, and maybe you forage for what you need. But how's that going to work when you're out in the middle of the desert and just traveling, living off of manna every day? So God said, send away male and female alike, send them outside the camp so they will not defile their camp where I dwell among them. The Israelites did so. They sent them outside the camp. They did just as the Lord had instructed him. That was almost a death sentence, because how could they live outside of the camp? They might be able to for a while, a few days, maybe a few weeks, but in the long run, they need to be in the camp so that they're getting the food and the water and stuff that they need. So this is a really sad thing, a very difficult thing. I would imagine would have been very difficult. But they had to send them outside the camp because they would then, I mean, you could potentially infect the whole camp with disease.
Maybe there was manna out there too.
I don't know. It was considered a very bad thing to have to be sent out of the camp. If it was for a day or for a couple weeks or a month, if they could come back in and show the priest that they were clean, they could come back in. But that was a very difficult thing. Here's another very difficult thing. What happens if somebody gets mad at one another and they're fighting over something? They're having a dispute. And you're traveling along in this camp kind of a thing. How do you settle disputes? The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, any man or woman who wrongs another in any way and so is unfaithful to the Lord is guilty and must confess the sin they have committed. Wait a minute. I thought it said they did something wrong to a person.
That's against God.
We don't think that way very well, do we? We think somehow that I can do something bad to Marvin and it's not being bad to God. I'm being nice to God. I just did something bad to Marvin. Right?
And it affects others too.
It affects everyone. And from God's point of view, if I do something bad to Eve, I'm doing something bad to God. I have to ask forgiveness from God, right? And from Eve. And that's one of the things that happens to us in this world, is we get into this idea, well, maybe I was a little rude to Judy, but I'm going to go to church and I'll just pray and praise God. When I was rude to Judy, I was rude to God. That's something that we as Christians need to consider.
All sin is against God.
It is. It is about the person.
Yeah.
But sin is sin, and sin is against God. So this is, I think, a really important statement right here.
And it separates us from God.
And are we supposed to be separated from God? We are supposed to be separated to God. Separating from this world to Him. It says, they must and must confess the sin they have committed. They must make full restitution for the wrong they have done, and 1/5 of the value to it, and give it all to the person they have wronged. But if that person has no close relative to whom restitution can be made for the wrong, the restitution belongs to the Lord and must be given to the priest, along with the ram with which atonement is made for the wrongdoer. All the sacred contributions the Israelites bring to a priest will belong to him. Sacred things belong to their owners, but what they give to the priest will belong to the priest. So, if I did something wrong to Judy, I would say, Judy, I saw your lamb out there and I was really hungry and I'm afraid I ate it. And Judy then's going to be mad. That was my lamb I was going to have for dinner, or whatever. She would be mad at me. So then I confess to her that I did it. I bring her a lamb and another 20% of a lamb. I don't know what that would be. And then I go to the temple, offer a sacrifice for atonement, and ask forgiveness from God. What would happen if we did that in our world today? Let's take the equivalent of our world today thing, okay?
Some of us would be broke.
That's what I would, yeah, we would be destitute.
I wonder if we would quit sinning so much against people.
I wonder
Well,
if
the
we
add
could
20% thing would kind of slow us down a little bit, but
And admitting that we did wrong. Somehow
Yes.
we think it's okay
Yes.
if we just ask God to forgive us, and we don't ever go back and say to someone, I'm really. And especially if you do something over and over again. It's one thing like if one time you did something that was offensive, but what if you kept repeating it? Which is terrible. I have that problem because I unintentionally do things, and maybe you all are different than me, but I do things unintentionally, not even realizing that I've offended someone, that I find out I've offended them, and I ask them to forgive me, but I don't know what else to do. What's the 20% more? I don't know what that is. And then I can try not to ever do it again, but sometimes I do anyway. Not on purpose, but I just do accidentally. Now, how do you ever make up for that?
But isn't there something that we have read about when we do things unintentionally?
What about it?
I don't remember that part.
To God, it doesn't matter whether it's intentional or not.
Is that the scapegoat? That is our unintentional sins?
For God, sin is sin. Intentional or unintentional doesn't matter. That's the flaw in my thinking. To think, oh, well, because I didn't know it or I didn't mean to do it, it doesn't count. But the good thing is, I live in forgiveness. I live in Christ. So He's applied His blood to me. So I am forgiven. But it also means I need to continue to change and evolve and get better at that thing, whatever that is. Whatever that thing is, I need to continue to evolve and get better at it. And whatever it is that God's working with me on, He's going to reveal to me, and then I'm going to do better. And then, at some point I'm going to do it again, right? Usually I'll catch it faster the second time or the third time, and I can react sooner. And pretty soon, before I say that thing that I shouldn't say, or before I do that thing, I'll catch myself before that comes, right? God grows us and helps us change. We live in a covenant where the blood has already been applied to us. The forgiveness has already been applied to us. We just need to receive it. So when, in this time, they had to go to the priest and make the offering, offering's already been made for us. And this idea of 20% more, I don't know what that actually means. I mean, in terms of like if you do something like you insult someone or you say something you shouldn't say, how do you give them 20% more? I don't know. I guess.
In some cases, it would be a wrong that is a material breach. I mean, not being fair in a transaction, cheating on the weight of something or whatever, and or underpaying for something, even though you were agreed to a standard amount, and those things, it would be easy to calculate a 20% penalty, surcharge on that. But yeah, like you say, if it's just something that I was rude.
And we're not under the same covenant. So at that time of that covenant, you would go offer the sacrifice, and their priest would make a value to that donkey, and then you would.
Yeah.
But in our covenant that we're in, we don't have that same kind of transactional thing. But maybe we can think of it the same way. That not only do I need to make it right with that person, but I need to make it 20% more right. I need to take more effort than just making it even, whatever that seems to me.
Yeah, you're going one step beyond.
Go further.
Yes.
Go further than just what's owed.
Here-
And maybe that'll help me to improve so that the next time I do better before it happens.
Now, in the verse 8 there seems to be a leap taken that's not totally explained, but maybe we can infer something, I don't know.
Well, if you don't have any relatives, then who are you going to make restitution to? If you're trying to make restitution for something that was done wrong and that person, say, is dead or dies,
I mean,
and they don't
that's
have any
assuming
family.
maybe the person is dead or otherwise unavailable.
Like if
guess.
you accidentally killed, say you're out in the field and you're swinging your sieve and you swing around and you chop somebody's head off. I mean, something you accidentally hurt somebody, and so then the restitution would be that you would pay that family the amount that that person would have been income to their family, right? You would have, that would be the kind of restitution you would pay. But not only would you replace that income, you would replace it by 20%. And it's saying here that if there's not anyone to make that restitution to for some reason, then you give it to the temple, you give it to the priest. So you are giving that money even if there's no other family members to pay that to or to pay it back from. Okay, last one for today, the test for an unfaithful wife. Now imagine the problems there would be if jealousy occurred in this kind of living circumstance. You're traveling in tents, through all these miles, and someone thinks that maybe you're looking at somebody the wrong way or whatever. So this is to deal with jealousy. It says, then the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, if a man's wife goes astray and is unfaithful to him, so that another man has sexual relations with her, and this is hidden from her husband, and her impurity is undetected, since there is no witness against her and she has not been caught in the act. And if feelings of jealousy come over her husband and he suspects his wife is impure, before I go on, what would happen if there were proof? If you saw them? If it was witnessed?
Ooh, there were some penalties.
Stoning. You would be taken out of the camp and stoned. That was the penalty. Right. So this one that we're reading right now is saying that this is that somebody thinks something happened, but there was no proof. In this situation, talk about what if there's no proof? Okay, so that's what we're saying, the what if. Verse 15, then he is to take his wife to the priest. He must also take an offering of 1/10 of ephah of barley flour on her behalf. He must not pour olive oil on it or put incense on it. By the way, there is one of the offerings that we read through was to bring barley as an offering, but the oil and the incense represented the spirit and prayer. And so what this is saying is this next part where it says, because it is a grain of offering for jealousy, a reminder offering to draw attention to wrongdoing. So it's intended to draw attention to the guilt. So if you added the spirit and prayer, you'd be talking about forgiveness and being close to God. So it's taking that out and just making it just the barley. Verse 16, the priest shall bring her and have her stand before the Lord. Bum, 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 bum. What's the problem with that? Who's allowed to go in and stand before the Lord? Only the priest. What would happen to you if you went in there? You die. All of a sudden, this woman who's being suspected of affairs, having an affair, is being brought in before the presence of the Lord. And she's not dying yet. But can you imagine what a fearful thing that would be? Then he shall take some holy water in a clay jar and put some dust from the tabernacle floor, into the water. After the priest has had the woman stand before the Lord, so she's in front of the altar of incense, he shall loosen her hair and place in her hands the reminder offering, the grain offering for jealousy, while he himself holds the bitter water that brings a curse. Then the priest shall put the woman under an oath and say to her, if no other man has had sexual relations with you, and you have not gone astray and become impure while married to your husband, may this bitter water that brings a curse not harm you. But if you have gone astray while married to your husband, and you have made yourself impure by having sexual relations with a man other than your husband, here the priest is to put the woman under this curse. May the Lord cause you to become a curse among your people when he makes your womb miscarry and your abdomen swell. May this water that brings a curse into your body so that your abdomen swells or your womb miscarries. Then the woman is to say, amen, so be it. Then the priest writes these curses on a scroll and then washes them off into the bitter water. So he writes it down, then rinses off the words into like a symbol into the water. He shall make the woman drink the bitter water that brings a curse, and this water that brings a curse and causes bitter suffering will enter in her. If you go back up to the description of what's going to happen, it says that her womb will miscarry and her abdomen swell. It's not going to be a long suffering because she would also then be taken out and stoned to death. So This is like saying either you're innocent or you're gonna suffer and then you're gonna be dead. So you're not gonna say you're innocent for no reason. You would say, well, you're right, I'm guilty, take me out and stone me, rather than be torturous and then be dead. This is a big thing. But in verse 27, if she has made herself impure, then this will be the result. When she's made to drink the water, okay, we already did that. So this then is the law of jealousy. When a woman goes astray and makes herself impure while married to her husband, or when feelings of jealousy come over a man because he suspects his wife, the priest is to have her stand before the Lord and is to apply this entire law to her. The husband will be innocent of any wrongdoing, but the woman will bear the consequences of her sin. So this was a test for the faithful wife to be innocent. Because even if the faithful wife says, no, I didn't do that, you don't have any proof of that, does jealousy just end? There's always, the husband has that suspicion, is always looking, right? So this is a way that the faithful wife can say, no, I did not, and be proven that, and then all be righted. So it's a way to get past it. If she was unfaithful, she knows the death is the penalty. So she needs to consider whether she wants to suffer first and then die, or just say, you're right, I'm guilty. Mm-hmm. So
Everything about guys that commit adultery.
no, I don't see anything about the guys committing adultery. So the next part we're going to talk about is the Nazirite. And these are all examples of how to live in the community together while they're traveling, before they get moving. It's interesting that these few things are detailed before they actually start moving through the desert.
I think there are other places to go there.
Okay, let's pray. Let me turn this off.